I'm Derek Kirk of Effectatron, and today we're going to take a look at doing a quick guide on how to model this tree. Obviously, it's very similar to the style of Animal Crossing. We're not making like a replica or anything, but I just wanted to show real quick how to make this tree really quickly inside of Cinema 4D. So let's take a look. Real quick, I just want to say be sure to check out derekkirk.net for all of my content, and check out our courses on CG shortcuts and my courses on Skillshare. All of these are going to be updated with new content as well with the new big changes with Redshift, so be sure to stay tuned and check those out. Okay, first thing we're going to need is we want to use a cylinder for the base. So go ahead and hold down this cube and choose cylinder. Instead of here, we see our cube. It starts right here in the middle of the ground. We want to raise that up so it's on the ground here on this plane. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to coordinates. And to do that real quickly, all we need to do is say we've got a height of 200. So we want to put it right in the middle of that, which means we need to go into the coordinates and type in 100. And now it's going to rest right there on the ground. Next thing we want to do is go back in here, go to our Objects tab. We're going to just increase the segments here. And we can't see these segments by default. What we need to do is we need to go to Display. And we're going to go to Quick Line Shadings here, Quick Shading with Lines. And we can sort of see our lines, but its default is the isoparms. And we actually want the wireframe to actually see our geometry here. So this is what we want. And we're going to say we want to do 6 for the height here, and we're going to leave it at 16 for the rotational segments here. So now that we have this roughly where we want it, we're going to go ahead and hit C. And what that's going to do is that's going to make it editable. We have now created an editable mesh rather than a primitive shape. So what we need to do is we want to go up here and grab this Polygon Tool. So if we click this, now we can see all these lines turn blue, and when we hover over these with our mouse, they highlight, which means we'll be able to click and it turns yellow, which means it's selected. So we want to hold Shift and click another one. So we've got two next to each other. Hold Alt, rotate around. Wherever you click and drag is where you're going to rotate from. So if you rotate from back here, it's going to rotate more from a point around here. And if you rotate right here, it's going to rotate right there on your object. So you're going to want to try to click where you want to rotate from. So now we've got that going. We're going to skip a square. I'm going to go over and hold Shift, click, click, hold Alt, click, rotate, hold Shift, click, click, and again, and again. So now we've got a couple sections, groups of 2 around our base of our trunk here. So what we want to do is we want to make these sort of where the trunk kind of splays out. So with these selected, we're going to right click. And this brings up all of our modeling tools here that we can do based on our polygon selection. And we want to use Extrude. And you can use the shortcut of MT or D, which doesn't register in your mind as a good hotkey for Extrude. And you can change these if you want. We're going to say right click and say Extrude. And now we have all these tools over here in the attributes. And if we start sliding these out, you'll see nothing actually changes. So nothing changes until you click Apply. And I'm going to hit Control Z because I don't like doing this way. If you want to, you can absolutely do this. If you know it needs to come out 20 centimeters, you type that in, click it. You can do a variation. So if we say 50 and a 50% variation, we're going to say Apply. And it's going to say some of those came out 50 and some of those did not. See how this one's further out than the others. So that's kind of a nice way to create some randomness in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to just mouse over this empty space here, and we're going to left click and hold, and that's just going to bring that out. And you can see how in the bottom right our offset is changing as we're sliding our mouse forward and back to and left and right to adjust this scale. And we just want it to come out a little bit here, and we're going to let go. And now what I want to do is I want to go back to my selection tool, my move tool. I can hit E. And I want you to just select these two faces. So hold Shift and select. If you want, we can use this tool here and just live select and just go whoosh, click and drag. And we just selected those. We're going to hit T, which brings up our scale tool. And now we can grab these axes and move these as a unit together. So what we want to do is we want to grab this X axis and just pull that in to kind of create a point, and then our Y and pull that in. And you can see how that's lifted that off the ground because it kind of pulls from the both sides and it meets in the middle. So now that we've pulled those in, we can hit E, go back to our move tool. We still have these selected. And we're just going to pull this down into the ground just like that. So you can see we've kind of created a very rough plank here. And so we're going to hold shift. Now we can click another front, hold shift, click again, and do the exact same thing. And the reason we're doing this kind of freehand is we don't want them to all be identical. And now that I have these ones selected, I'm going to actually grab this angle right here and kind of pull it back in and down. So that one's going to be a little shorter than that one. Click, shift click, T, scroll in, pull in real low, and we're going to grab this angle and move it on the X and the Z and the Y at the same time and make that one a long one. Click, shift click, T, in, down. That one's going to be a kind of a chunky one. Pull that out a bit. And then lastly, the last group here, pull that down. And so we've purposefully been kind of random and not super clean with it because a tree trunk's not perfectly symmetrical. So now we've got this going on. And so what we want to do now is create those little branches that have kind of come out. So we're going to grab our square, like let's say right here. And we're going to right click. And I say square, I mean polygon. And we're going to right click and hit extrude, click and drag in the empty space, come out a little bit. And then what we're going to do, if you don't want to hit extrude, what you can do is you can hold control and just click and drag, and that will make a copy and instantly create those planes for you. So rather than using extrude, you can do that to adjust certain polygons. So it'll make a mark where it was and pull it back out. We're going to pull this back, but if you just slide it, it's not going to create that extra point. But when you control, it's going to create that point there for you in those segments. So we want it to be about right there. And then we're going to do another one down here. And if we just pull right now, it's going to pull all of these with it. And we don't want that. We just want it to extrude. So if we didn't have our extrude tool selected, let's just say we had our move tool. And we hold control and click, and that's going to go ahead and pull that out for us. And so we can do that just like that. So now we can go back to our model object selection tool. So we have everything here. Everything's looking super blocky and chunky. But what we're going to do is with our cylinder selected, we're going to hold Alt and click Subdivision Surface. And you can see already how that has just smoothed everything out. And now we have this kind of nice, soft tree look. And that's exactly what we wanted. Perfect. So now we can come in here and rename this trunk by double clicking. Now we can hide that. And the best part is we can still come in here and we can turn off this subdivision surface if we want, or we can have our polygon tool selected and you can see how everything's kind of bent based on that subdivision surface. So if we wanted these to be more square and less rectangular, we could, grab this face, pull it in and make it more of a rounder nub. We can even hit E, bring up the move tool and then hold control and pull it back into itself. Just like that, and we could create a little hole in the tree just like that. We can hit T, scale that in just a little bit. And the way to scale in all axes at the same time is to not select one, but just click off in the distance and that will scale all of them together. So if I didn't hit control there just for reference and I just moved it back with E, I would be pushing into it that way. And that's kind of a nice look as well, but we're going to go ahead and keep it flat here. Push it back so it's flat and then hold the control and bring that in. And now we've got kind of this nice round little nub in our tree. Bring that in like that. There we go. So we grab that excess axis and pulled it in. If we think we did something wrong, we pulled it in too much, all we need to do is go to our line tool here and we can double click on that and just scale those segments in together and rearrange those after the fact if we want to. And we can bring that back out. And we can do the same thing by holding control, but it's not going to have the same effect. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now let's go ahead and make our tree with our leaves and stuff. So the easiest way to do this, what I did to create this look was I just used a capsule. So click and hold the square and use a capsule. And we don't want this to intersect. Now we could do two things. We could turn off and hide our cylinder from the viewport here by double clicking this. Or if you're ever working on something with a lot of things in your scene and you just want to look at whatever you're clicking on, you can hit this little eyeball icon, and it's going to go ahead and just isolate whatever you're working on. So if I want to look at my trunk, I can click that trunk and it's just going to show me that. If I do my light, it's going to show me just my light. Capsule, just my capsule. So this is a cool way to just isolate and solo that viewport on only what you're working on. For this capsule, what we want to do, we're going to turn this radius down to about 20. And we're going to leave the height at about 200. Turn the segments up to 6 for the height. And for the cap, we're going to leave that at 4 and the rotation at 16 as well. So what we want to do for this is we're going to hit C. Again, make this completely editable. Make sure we're in the model select mode. We're going to hit T to scale. And we're just going to grab the X axis and we're going to squish this. We're squishing this down. So we've got a nice sort of flat kind of leaf here. Now what we want to do is we want to bend this. So to bend this, we're going to hold Shift and click this bend modifier. And Shift will go ahead and put that as a child of our capsule, which is exactly what I want. A child means that this is inside of this and the purple icons work going up. It won't affect things beneath it, but it does affect the thing directly above it, the parent of that child. So with our bend selected, we want to go ahead and say Y plus and hit fit to parent. Make sure you click fit to parent and that will size it up to your shape. And then we can adjust the strength here. And we can bend this and you see how that's bending out that way. We actually want this to stay where it is and we want it to bend out this way. So what we need to do is just change the alignment from Y plus to Y negative. Then we want to click fit to parent again to reset that. So now we have this nice curve here. Very good. So we've got this nice bendy leaf and it's a little too bendy. So let's pull that strength back to about 33, about 40%. Now what we can do is with this selected, we can right click this capsule and go to connect objects. If you're very confident that you will not need to change what we've created, you can do connect objects and delete. And basically when we hit connect objects, that's going to make a mesh of this with this modifier connected to it. So this, is gone and we can just look at our capsule and this no longer has a bend modifier. We cannot change it. This is now just a mesh just locked in this position, which is what we want. But we're going to turn these off just by clicking these red dots. So this is now here just in case we ever need to change it, we will. But we're going to just leave it at this capsule and we're going to call this leaf. So now we need to take these leaves and kind of create an array of them around a circle to kind of create this nice full leaf pine tree look. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a cloner by clicking this cloner object here. We're going to take our leaf and pull it into our cloner so it's a child of our cloner. With our leaf selected, we can hold Alt and click the cloner and that will automatically put what we have selected as a child of our object here. So green works down, it affects things beneath it. Purple affects things above it. Instead of our cloner here, what we're going to do now is we want to change it from object. We want to go into the object tag, change the mode from grid array to radial. And you can kind of see how this is working. So what we want to do first is just increase the radius of this a little bit. Say 100. We're going to increase the count and that's just going to give us more leaves, which is exactly what we want. Now these are all facing the wrong direction. So what I'm going to do is go to transform and start rotating these on the H value here. I'm going to rotate them at 90 degrees. So now we have this nice hula skirt looking thing from our trees and this is going to be our leaves. And if we want, we can grab the B here and flare that out just a little bit more. So we have a little more of that dynamic swoop down. So -3 for the B. So this is looking good, but it's not perfect because it is too perfect. We want this to have some randomness to it. So what we want to do now is with our cloner selected, go to MoGraph Effectors and then choose Random Effector. And at first it's going to disappear, and that's because we have the isolate viewport on. So let's go ahead and uncheck that. And now we can see our splines here and our tree trunk. Let's just hide our tree trunk from view really quick. You can see that random effector has just made our leaves kind of go all over the place, and we don't want it to be that strong. So with our random selector selected, go to parameter, and basically we want to lower these values down to about 5, 5, and 5, like very small values. And for the rotation, we just want just the tiniest bit, maybe 3 and 3. So we could do a little bit more this way if we wanted to. We could do 5, 8, and 5. And that just gives us this nice random organic look to this. Let's go ahead to our cloner, go to our object, and let's increase our count to about 30. There's some overlap here, but I think that looks pretty good and adds some depth to it now that we have that sort of off centerness with that randomness. So now we have a little more of that going on. We can do 8. Yeah. 8, 8, and 8. Yeah. We'll do 8, 8, and 8. Hit E to bring up the move tool. Hold control, click and drag and let go to create a clone of that, a copy of that, I mean. Hit R to bring up the move tool, and we can just rotate this around so it doesn't match the layer below it perfectly. Then we're gonna hit T, and we're just gonna scale that in a little bit and move it up so we're not clipping through our leaves there. And then we're gonna do the same thing again. Hold control, click drag, scale it in, rotate it around, and pull it up so it's not clipping through. And then we'll make one more layer for the top. And for this top layer, we're going to kind of ramp this out a little bit more. We're going to say -10, and then we're going to make our radius smaller. We want our radius to almost touch at the top, and we're going to bring that up like that. We can make our radius on this next layer just a tiny bit smaller too, and make it flare out just a bit more. So it's going to flare out a little bit more and get a little bit tighter as it goes up here. Okay, and so now with this top selected, what we're going to do is we're going to right click this and say connect objects and delete. And that's made this a mesh. And so we kind of want the top of this to come to more of a point together. With the cloner selected, we're going to click and hold our bend modifier here, hold shift, and then let go over the word taper. And that's going to put a taper on this object. And so we want to fit it to parent by clicking fit to parent. And then we can start sliding this strength up, and you can see how that's going to bring everything to a point there. And then we can kind of mess with the curvature here. And we can kind of just make it have a little bit of a curve to it. There we go. And we could do a fillet on it if we want. And we can kind of bring that down, but we don't really need that. So we're gonna say 100 and 113 for the curvature. So now if we look at our little object here, we'll turn our trunk back on. Can't see our trunk because it's hidden. So what we need to do is we need to grab all of our cloner objects here and just move those up and rest them over our trunk. Here we go. So if at any point you think any of these are too tall or anything, grab this layer and we're just going to squish it down a bit, pull it down, push it back up, and all the axes, and then we're going to move this one down, scale it up a little bit, and finally we'll take our top cloner and pull that down, and we'll pull this one back up, and we're going to go into the cloner and just kind of scale that to there, bring our radius down just a bit, and maybe scale that in just the tiniest bit. There we go. So we just wanted to kind of hide things, create things, and we can go back to our bottom one here and flare that out a little bit as well. So more about -9. So now we have this nice pine tree that we've created. So if we put this, on a little ground, throw some materials on all of it. And we hit render. You see, we have this nice, pretty little pine tree. So then you can texture that either with Redshift or Cinema 4D. All I did for these colors is, this is just a little roughness on that reflection. And then I used a ramp node from green to lighter green, set to circular for the leaves. And then for the trunk, I just used a noise for the bump map that I stretched out in the Y. And just did a little ramp for the brown there as well, just to get some multiple colors in there. But there you go. That's how you can model a really nice looking tree. Especially if you're going for that kind of isometric view. And then if you want to make this tree one object, you obviously can select all of your things together, right click and say connect objects. So now you have an object that's a tree. And you can turn off all of these others, hold Alt and double click all of these. And so now we just have this tree. And if you wanted to clone that or move that around, we have that option. And we still can make tweaks to this tree if we want back here, but we will need to recreate this mesh. But now we've had this as a mesh, we can hit the scatter pen tool, scroll down here real quick, change some of the size to be about 50%, change some of the rotation. And now we can just be like, oh, not that way. Change some of the rotation. And we'll just click and drag around. And now we've got, a nice hide. We'll just hide our tree here. And we're just going to hold the middle mouse button, make this circle selection bigger. And we're just going to paint on here, and we'll unhide our tree. And now we've got a nice little forest scene here. So there you go. Because we just created one mesh. Pretty neat. So there you go. Hopefully that was helpful. That was kind of a longer one, but that's going to be just kind of a neat way to model that kind of Animal Crossing style tree. So if you guys like kind of quick modeling projects, let me know. I love modeling. I don't do it enough. There's so many ways to do everything. So this is not the only way you can do it, but just know that there's always multiple ways to do stuff. And I just wanted to share it this way. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. See you next time.